And here we are on the 30th of March, a gray day, 2020, but
A lot of rain. You got a lot of rain out your way?
we're still here. Yep. Actually, record breaking in these parts.
Yeah.
No flooding.
No flooding? You haven't heard of any flooding?
No. So we're doing
That's
pretty
good.
well.
Good
Far so
news.
good. Day at a time.
Good.
Okay, we'll be talking to Peter Anthony Holder in a few minutes, but you wanted to cover off on something, so go ahead, please.
Okay. I just got a couple of quick things. One. Oh, I did it. They're sharing the screen, and it's not sharing the screen.
Yes. Go down to your browser at the bottom.
Right.
There
Right, you are.
go.
Okay. I don't know if you know this guy.
No.
He is somebody who is just making great waves on Facebook and Twitter and all sorts of other media. He does an unbelievable imitation of 45. If you close your eye, he's very, very funny. He's
45. I'm sorry, 45?
We're talking about President Trump.
Okay.
And he does a wonderful imitation of him. And if you close your eyes, actually, you won't laugh. It's almost creepy. He tells his version of the Easter story. You know, President Trump still wants the country to rise again at Easter.
Well, he's changed his mind now. He's changed his tune.
Oh, this guy is great. This guy is just wonderful. Very, very funny. He's on my Facebook page if you want to go and look for him. Very funny indeed. Now, we know about social.
What is this guy's name?
I never did get it. Never got his name. Some American kid. He obviously knows how to do his New York accent, but he certainly knows how to do his Trump accent. And it is bang on. He's got Make America Great Again. It's backwards. I don't know if that's the intention or that's just the way the camera hit him. But he is just looks about 35 maybe. He's really, really funny. So I think you might enjoy that. Do you need a laugh today?
Today I do. You haven't given me one yet, so we'll see what we can do. I'll try to track down this guy's name after we're done.
He's very funny. Give yourself
I'll put a
break.
link up.
Give yourself
I'll put a link up. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Continue. Yep.
This is Betty Dotson, who has for years been talking about sex with the favorite person in your world. You.
That would be me.
She is. Yeah. She is. Yes, she is. She is known as a masturbation icon. She is now 90.
That's a Woody Allen joke, right?
Yeah, having sex with the one person in the world you love best.
Exactly.
Anyway, there's an article in the New York Times. This is the safest time. This is the time when your safest sex partner is yourself.
Okay.
And I've got a link up there to the New York Times article. I thought you might like that.
Thank you. I'm smiling now. I'm smiling now.
That's great. Well, it's about time. And then there's this one. This is Bubbles, of course, favorite of my son. I immediately sent this to my son. He's telling people to self-isolate. Wonderful sage advice from Bubbles, who was asked to do a public service announcement. This, again, is on my page, face page, and I share it with you. Go and look at it. It's really funny. It's a lot of fun. So that is pretty much my stuff for today.
All right. Very good.
Okay.
Let's see if we can get you back on here. Yes, there you are. There you go. No, you're still in sharing. Do you want to turn off your sharing there? I'm looking back in time. There we go. He's back.
Is it? Okay. I guess you have to do a third step.
Yeah.
You got me?
I get you. I can see your shirt. Nicely pressed.
Yeah.
Let's get Peter Anthony Holder on here. Peter's been around in this business for so long. I've got so many questions to ask him. And we're going to be joining him via audio.
Oh, already?
Peter Anthony Holder. And I'm going to do a quick share here to get his webpage up.
Oh, that coffee is just lovely. Hello there. There's the Grumpod.
Hello.
Peter.
Hello.
Hi, Peter.
You got to hold on just 1 second. I'll be right
Okay.
with you.
All right.
Don't go away.
He is
Gentlemen,
in his
How are you,
stately
Peter?
in his stately manse on Newman Boulevard in Montreal. Peter Anthony Holder, when's the last time the interviewer was interviewed?
well, quite a few times in the last little while because in 2017 I put out a book, so I've been making the tour, as the saying goes.
Great Conversations, the title.
Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars.
Now, we have to go back to the beginning. You've been in this business for what, 40 years or more now, Peter?
Yeah, just about that. Yikes.
My God, you must have been a child, Peter.
Kind of scary, isn't it?
Whoa.
Where did you start?
Where did I start? Well, I was at Dawson Radio. If you're talking about professionally, the first place I worked was actually FM 96. I was a technical or board operator. I did that for a couple of years, and then I went to Brockville, Ontario, because you had to go to a small market back in those days. And people ask me, why would I go to Brockville? And I say, well, that's because I wanted to cut my salary in half and double the black population.
The other guy's still there, isn't he?
It's funny you say the other guy, because when I got the job and I was interviewed by the owner of the radio station, he said, "You'll like it here. The other family does."
Okay. All
And he
righty
wasn't
then.
kidding.
Boy, oh boy. Okay. So then from Brockville, did you worked your way back to Montreal, did you?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I heard you talking on your show the other day. You mentioned, I think you mentioned Earl Pomerantz.
Yes, David was talking about him, yes.
And I actually know Lorne. I actually know Hart Pomerantz, rather, his brother.
Yeah, I always thought Earl was the older one. It's Hart who's the older brother.
Yeah, I actually know Hart because you may know that when he and Lorne broke up, they broke up because Lorne wanted to go back to school and become a lawyer, which he did. Or Hart wanted to go back to school and become a lawyer because he did. And he was my lawyer because I ended up suing my former employers.
Oh my.
Yes. So that's how
Did he wear the beaver outfit or the Mountie outfit?
No, he didn't wear either, but he obviously has a great sense of humor, and I got fired for playing a practical joke, so he was the perfect lawyer for that situation. Previous to taking my court case, one of his previous clients was a stripper who had breast implants, but the operating table was set up for some strange reason at an angle, so when the doc was they were going the wrong way, and that was one of his previous clients. So you need a good sense of humor.
Okay, all right. So can we say
you can't wear strapless anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so is there a second book in preparation here, Peter? Because is that story in the first book?
No, there's
okay.
no. That's not in any book.
Okay.
No.
Can I ask if there was restitution for the stripper?
From what I understand, there was. I mean, Hart is hysterical. He's just hysterical. I mean, first of all, how many times do you get to go into a lawyer's office and the lawyer has an Emmy? Because both Lorne and Hart worked together as writers on the last season of Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, that's right. And Earl got himself an Emmy too for a Mary Tyler Moore episode.
I think he also got more for working on the last Bob Newhart show as well.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Very talented writer.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when did the stuff STUPH file start? Did you start that out in the Boondocks, or was that CJAD days?
That was the CJD days. You know, when I started my old radio show, I always found the kicker stories, the most interesting stories in the newscast, the ones at the end. I mean, you know this because I mean, you made a career out of doing this on your newscast on TV.
Yep.
I
For
love
sure.
I love the kicker stories. So what I would do is I would start my show with 15 minutes of kicker stories before I got into anything I was doing, and I used to call that the stuff. And so that's where that came from.
And the interviews, did that come out of all of that? Did you begin to take an interest in people you were talking about, or was that a separate effort?
Well, I was always just interested in the people I was interested in. I always just thought that if I was curious enough to want to talk to certain people, then the audience would go along with me and be curious to hear what these people had to say. I find that the interesting people are sometimes the quirkiest people. Like, for instance, you know, I spend a lot of time during the course of my week looking for the stories for the Stuff File program, the kicker stories. And every once in a while, I'll come across a story and I'm going, oh no, I just can't read this. I have to track this person down. And that's the fun part of it.
Peter, the Stuff File, you said you started with 15 minutes. You were able to find 15 minutes worth of stuff a day?
Before the web.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
No kidding. And you found it. Well, I guess you did. You must have, because I could certainly search out a few minutes myself, no time flat, but 15 minutes. Wow.
And part of it is not necessarily how quirky or odd the story is, but when you put one or two stories together in a narrative, it leads to quirkiness. I don't know if either of you remember the great NBC show that used to be on late night called NBC News Overnight.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
With
That's
Linda.
a long time ago.
Yeah, I was actually in Brockville when that show aired, and I would watch that show religiously because to me, it was just great writing. It's the kind of show that I feel is missing today. You know, you have shows like The Daily Show and John Oliver that require an audience and usually a comedian. The thing that was great about NBC News Overnight is they didn't write punchlines. They just wrote the news funny. And it was the order they put the stories in that made it funny, even if the stories themselves were not. And that's what I always loved.
What was her name again? Linda? You mentioned her name?
Linda Ellerby. And
That's right. Linda
Yeah,
Ellerby.
great, right? She was a wonderful writer.
yeah, I believe the first host, her first partner was, his last name was Dobbins. I want to say Lloyd Dobbins, I think is his name.
Oh, yes, I remember that too. That's an age ago. That's an ice age ago. That's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, poor Linda that show got canned, right? And Linda was not too pleased about it.
Exactly. If you want a great read, her tagline was, "And so it goes." She used to end off her newscast with all of that. That's also the title of her book, and it's hysterical.
You know,
So-
that wry Texas accent of hers.
Yes, exactly.
So the boilerplate question, of course, is how many people have you interviewed so far, Peter?
Oh gosh, I guess I suppose I could do a count because I'm anal retentive with records, but I have no idea. A lot, a lot of people.
And
Do
Thousands.
you still have the Stuff File on file? Have you kept everything, or are you a pack rat?
Oh, yes, he is. I know that for a fact.
You've got it all, Peter?
Well, first of all, I have every celebrity interview I've ever done. And I keep, like I said, I keep anal retentive records. I do a flow sheet of what I'm doing on each show, and all those sheets from all those shows, including my CJAD days, are filed. So I have, and by the way, the CJAD days, that was 20 years worth.
You did it for 20. Holy.
Yeah.
Okay, would you want to ask him, Yvonne, or should I?
Go ahead.
The absolute worst interview and the absolute best. And of course,
Another
over this-
boilerplate question, but we want to find out. We're dying to find out.
Wow.
Who did you absolutely despise before, during, and after?
And after. Thank you. And still do.
And
Well,
still-
are you talking celebrity? Is that what?
not
well, no,
necessarily.
let's
Well,
maybe-
sure.
Maybe a
Yes.
difficult interview because,
Yeah.
for example, Dave and I have discussed this before. Interviewing stand-up comics is a bit of a trying process at times, but that's just an idea. Is there a particularly difficult celebrity you've had to deal with?
I also worked for Just for Laughs for 20 years. So
Yes.
for me, the trick of interviewing a comedian is to ask them beforehand, do you want me to lead? Do you want me to be an audience or not? That's rule number one.
Right.
And do you want me to lead you to any of your routine or not? And once you set those ground rules and let them set those ground rules, it's fine.
See,
Because
that's the way. Yeah, that's the way I
usually they
should
don't
have
want to give up
proceeded.
their material, do they? They usually don't want to give up their material, right?
they're very appreciative when you ask those questions because they get to be interviewed a lot. And one of the things they quite frankly hate is when they come across somebody who wants to interview them and try to out funny the funny guy.
Yeah.
Right.
They've
Right.
al- They're
I
always
remember
on.
doing an interview with, I'm sorry, Peter, with an interview with Emo Phillips at the very, very first Just for Laughs.
Right.
We did Newswatch live from Saint Denis Street. And you're right. I had a little chat with him before we went to air, and it went smoothly. He riffed a little bit, did a few bits, and it was perfect. But
He's very charming, right? He can be a
yes,
lot of
very
fun.
intelligent. But that's perfect advice for anyone out there who may be finding themselves in the same situation. Set things up first, and then you'll be fine.
Did he do the one about him standing in his crib in his room and hearing his parents argue in the next room? I told you it would survive.
Yes.
Oh, there was that, and the other one. He was in a cab in Berlin, and the cabbie says, "It's tough to find a good bagel around here." And Emo says, "And whose fault is that?"
Yeah.
Badang. Anyway, Peter, okay, so are all the archives available online? Because you have peteranthonyholder.com is your main site, and it connects to your podcast. I guess you don't call that a podcast, do you? You call it the Stuff File. Yes?
Yeah. I also call it a radio show because it's
Okay.
kind of a hybrid. It's on some small radio stations. It's on a few college radio stations. And yeah, it's online. So
Okay.
it plays on various formats in various parts of the world.
That's interesting. Now you have you have regulars. One I recall hearing frequently is the Gabby Cabby. Is he still on?
The Gabby Cabby is occasionally on. I don't do the regulars as much as I used to, and the reason being the show is only once a week. When I was 5 days a week on CJD, I needed to fill up the show with regulars but if I were to do the regulars every week on the show, it would be the same show every week, right? So
Right.
I don't do the regulars as much as I used to. I do the Gabby Cabby every once in a while. I do Stuart Nullman with Book Banter every once in a while. I do Andrew Vazakis, the Night Sky guy. But again, on a need-to basis. Like, for instance, if something happens in the news, either with space or with astronomy, I'll go to Andrew. And if I'm doing something that's specifically to NASA, I'll go to a guy named Rod Pyle in L.A., who I used to use on a regular basis as well. I do have those people I can go to when I need to.
The cabbie is the guy from New York, right? He's a New York cabbie?
Right.
That's correct, Peter Franklin.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet him in person?
I've never met him in person, no, but we've been in contact a lot off the air. We keep in touch. He's recuperating right now. He had back surgery, so he's getting over that. He's doing well, but we're all getting a lot older, and he's still a cabbie. I mean,
Wow.
So.
And interesting, I guess it'll be interesting conversations in the midst of this pandemic and everything, considering he's right in the middle of it there.
Absolutely. The thing I'm wondering about when this is all over, I'm dying to see everyone's original hair color. That's going to be interesting.
That's what somebody was saying. In 3 weeks, we're all going to know. But we didn't really answer, Peter, and I used to know whether I had a guest or not. Who was the worst person you interviewed?
There you go.
Well,
he's being careful. He's being cagey here.
No, I'm not.
No, I'm not trying to corner you. We all have our nightmares.
They're always extenuating. Oh, I know who. I was thinking of somebody else, but remember Dick Williams used to manage the Expos.
The Expos, yeah.
Yeah, he I've got to preface this that I went to the Larry King School of Broadcasting. When it comes to interviewing authors, my rule of thumb is I never read the book before I interview the guest.
Right. Yeah.
Because I always find from an audience point of view, it's like you're walking into a cocktail party and you're walking from cluster to cluster and you're enjoying the conversation, but you're not quite into it because you weren't there at the beginning. And that's what it sometimes is like when you're hearing somebody talk to an author about a book and they're already at a space where you're not. And the real reason for the person to be there is to sell the book. And I always find that if you found the author interesting and a great conversationalist, that you'll want to read his or her book because it's written by an interesting person. So that's what I try to get out of any author that I talk to. So Dick Williams had written a book, and he was still the manager of the Expos at the time. He had written a book, and he started off every answer of the book with, well, if you had read the book, ...
My.
His publicist got to him.
And I simply said to him at one point, well, if I had read the book, maybe you wouldn't need to be here.
Oh, what did Dick say? Because Dick's got a sharp tongue.
That's the one time I think I kind of shut him up.
Wow. And of course, it all depends on timing. I've had people who have interviewed, and Yvonne, this has probably happened to you as well, and they have been wonderful and charming and I've talked with colleagues and they say, oh, that bastard. Because I interviewed Dick Williams after he was canned by the Expos.
Oh, yeah,
and,
okay.
Yeah, he was back home in California. And of course, I was in the newsroom in Montreal, and I called him on the phone. And he said, look, I'm just having dinner. I'll call you back at the studio number. I thought, oh, yeah, right. Well, you know what? An hour later, I got the phone call, and I got a great interview with him. I interviewed Leonard Cohen, lovely man, delightful man. It was the worst interview I've done in my life. Awful.
Oh.
Stink. Well, mine was Sid Caesar. And the reason why I hesitated earlier is because sometimes there are extenuating circumstances when it comes to why somebody is surly, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're usually dealing with go-betweens. You're usually dealing with PR people. And sometimes if they make a mistake, for instance, they don't tell the client that this is when it's taking place, the client might take it out on you. And that's what happened when I interviewed with Sid Caesar. And this was on CJD. It was live at the time. And I actually cut the interview short because he just wasn't having it. And I think it was more a situation that he was blindsided by a PR person who didn't quite tell him that I was doing this interview at this time and he wasn't ready for it. So he kind of took it on me. So
you've got that phrase that you always use with bad interviews is the person doesn't want to be there.
That is a problem. Yeah, and you can feel it in your bones, right? The moment they open their mouth.
Yeah. Now,
did you ever interview?
Mine was Mort Saul.
Okay. Did you ever interview Larry Storch?
I heard you guys talking about that on the show. No, I never interviewed Larry Storch.
Oh, no, that's too bad. Okay, because Dave, I was talking about the artwork there where Dave looks like a young Larry Storch. He's getting tired of me saying that, but I'm enjoying it.
In the book, when I was writing Great Conversations, I found that as I was writing it, because I loved everyone I talked to, I really enjoyed it. I got to talk to people that I want to talk to. I'm not an autograph seeker. I've never understood the idea of an autograph. Nowadays, you get selfies with celebrities. I never understood that because all it does is it proves to other people that I met X, Y, and Z. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it was a fruitful or interesting conversation. It was just I thrusted a piece of paper in front of them, they signed it, and I walked away. That means nothing to me. The idea that I had a chance to talk to these people, that's what I really enjoyed. So when I was writing the book, I got the feeling that maybe this book is going to be a little too Pollyannish because I loved every experience I had with all these people, even the ones who might be mildly difficult. And then I remembered when I was, again, and it was the chapter I wrote the last, but it's not the last chapter in the book, because each chapter is a different conversation. I remember when I did the interview with Michael Moriarty of Law and Order fame.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, that guy was weird.
Yeah.
Oh,
Heavily
okay.
strange, eh? He'd moved to Nova Scotia by this time?
Was he still in? Was he in Nova Scotia or was he still in Vancouver? No, yeah, you're right. He was in Nova Scotia. He was in Nova Scotia, and he was here in Montreal because he was shooting a television series. He was guest starring on Jules Verne when it was shooting here in Montreal. So it was one of those situations where we couldn't get our schedules to mesh. So I said to him, "Well, why don't I come in on my day off and on your day off on a weekend, and I'll pick you up." And I'll bring you to the radio station and we'll record the interview and I'll drop you back off at your hotel. He said, okay. I knew that this guy was kind of quirky. And I'd read some stories about him where he was, I wouldn't say shady, but you wouldn't want to be alone with the guy. You know what I mean? It's just
Creepy.
Thank you. Creepy. So I decided to bring my best friend along with me because we were going to go to dinner anyway. After I did this interview, dropped him back at his hotel. So I brought my best friend with me, who happened to be at the time a Montreal police officer. So
What could go wrong?
nothing. So I pick him up at the Four Seasons Hotel. Was that on Peel? Not the Four Seasons. The Sheraton. The other one.
Yeah,
Anyway.
the one next to the CIL building.
No,
The CIBC.
no, not that one. There's the other one.
Doesn't matter where the hotel is. Get on with the story.
I pick him up and he's got his coffee and he's standing at the top of the stairs looking very disheveled. Now, mind you, he had long, straggly hair and a beard. That was part of the character he was playing, but his clothes looked very Goodwill, right? And he's standing there with the coffee cup. And when I say cup, I'm talking the hotel's coffee cup and saucer with spoon. And he gets into the car, and all I'm thinking is, you better not be planning on spilling that in Montreal. Because it's a brimming cup of coffee. And you know Montreal potholes between Sherbrooke and Peel and the radio station. It's a travel. Anyway, so we finally get to the underground parking lot, and he's talking all kinds of craziness. I mean, he's talking conspiracy theories and why he, yeah, in the conversation, I tried to bring up the idea of, do you watch Law and Order anymore now that you're not on it? And he proceeded to tear shreds into NBC, the network, and his replacement on the show. All on the drive to the station. Danger, Will Robinson. Yeah. It was like, and then he got into deep political philosophies.
Oh boy.
And this was in the interview. I mean, it was just one weird thing. I remember when I pulled into the underground garage at CJD when we were on the old Fort Street building, I thought, I'm glad I have my friend with me because this is where I perish. You know, I'm in an underground parking lot with a guy who's about 6'4" and who won an Emmy for playing a Nazi.
Very convincingly too.
Convincingly, and this is where I'm going to perish. So yeah, that was an experience.
Oh, the stories. Listen, we got to let you go there, buddy. But great conversations. Published in 2017, still available on Amazon from what I saw, and via your website too, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And how many pages and how many folks do you talk about in the book?
There are about 32.
Okay. All of these celebrities and
including the two men on the moon, Alan Bean and Harrison Schmitt.
Wow.
Harrison Schmitt, my favorite astronaut.
We could do 4 hours with you, Peter, but we thank you very much. Peter's not up at this time of the day. Not up at this time of the day most of the time. We're talking about 10 o'clock in the morning here. So go get some rest.
Well, I can't because as I told you yesterday when I was speaking to you, I'm going to be doing an interview with Kathy Reichs in about an hour and a half.
Her new book.
Well, new book. Good interview.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks. Anytime, guys. Thank you.
Ciao, buddy.
Talk to you soon. Yeah, great stuff.
All right. So, my goodness, I go back a long ways with Peter, too. Why don't you finish your story about Mort Saul?
Oh, you heard that? I thought
No, I
you got
picked up on
lost in
that.
the ether.
Maybe we can just
It was
close
it
with
was
our worst interviews. Go ahead.
well, Sid Caesar was Peter's death march, which is too bad. Can you imagine the stories that guy would be able to tell
Yeah,
just with
yeah,
Howard Morris alone?
yeah.
Anyway, no, we had Mort Saul, who's Canadian. He was coming to the comedy festival to get some sort of lifetime award, and we were trying to set up the taping. And of course, it was 3:30 in Montreal and midday in Los Angeles. And there wasn't much to it other than that he was a miserable old bastard. He was just unpleasant, not nice. And, we have this bullshit stereotype of, oh, Canadians are nice. Mort wasn't a nice person. Mort
No,
was just, no. He yelled at us. He said, you screwed up the time. And I finally said to him, as I've said to other people, which has actually calmed them down, I said, well, if you really don't want to do this, we don't have to do this. And that is when he said, great, and hung up.
oh
And
my.
that
Okay.
was the end of that.
Mine was a bit more jocular than that. It was at the Quebec Carnival, the Carnaval de Québec. We were covering it live. I think you remember this one. Do you
It
remember
was
this one?
40 below zero. You were
Yeah,
outside, weren't you?
we were covering it live. Diana Bishop was there in those days. I think Tommy Harrington was there. We'll be talking to Tommy, by the way, in the next few days. And of course, Newswatch went to air around 11 o'clock at the time, 10 after 11, whatever it was, whatever time it was at the time. So they brought Bonhomme Carnaval up this scaffolding into the booth where we were sitting and covering the parade. And the kid in the costume was gassed. He was three sheets to the wind, first of all. Secondly, unilingual francophone, I guess at about 99%. Okay. So I was there practically talking to myself into a plastic head for about 5 minutes in live TV.
Yes.
And I could hear, I had my earphone on, I could hear the people back in the control room falling all over themselves as they would keep going. No, you got another 4 minutes. Go, ask him. Oh my God. And you could hear this echo in the room going, ways and banks. And who was watching that night? Mike Boone was watching that night, of course. And the next day, Mike, bless him, published a little bit, and he was very gracious with me. And he said, my heart kind of went out to, that pain in the ass because he was having a rough time. But boy, my life flashed in front of my eyes a couple times that night, sitting there in my sweater, talking to the Bonhomme Carnaval.
The
Blasted.
thing is they also put you in the most difficult. You're in a booth where it's 48 below zero, too, right?
Bags, right? This booth was made out of garbage bags and plexiglass, right? The wind's blowing, and the kid can barely stay seated because he's so drunk he can't keep that head
up. Now we can look back and laugh.
Yeah, we could write a book, you and I, I'm sure. So anyway, all right. Well, that's it for this Monday. Fare thee well. It's a gray day, but things will look up. Friends
and you said, fortunately enough, from what you've heard, nobody's been flooded. I feel sorry for the folks close to the water there in Chateauguay and all those areas. Nobody's flooded?
Not to my knowledge, from what I saw this morning on the headlines. The water levels are up, but they're watching very closely. And my goodness gracious, the last thing we need is another kick in the pants here. So let's just.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking that we got enough problems. Okay,
buddy.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.